the entire automotive industry was defined by one man's technological achievements. A man whose name never appeared on a single car. So you might not have ever heard of him. But you certainly know the cars he created. Because their technological advancements trickled down to the cars that we drive every day. And trickled up to the cars that we put on posters. And over to the cars that we barely knew existed. This is the story of a man whose cars owned the entire automotive universe. From 250 miles an hour to 250 miles per gallon. And everything in between.
The Piëchisode is brought to you by the Haggerty Drivers Club, which includes a subscription to our award-winning magazine, 24/7 flatbed roadside assistance, and far more. Join or get more info at the link below.
This is the Bentley Continental GT Speed. The Bentley badge means its interior is filled with sumptuous leather and gorgeous wood. And then the Speed badge means it has neither of those things. But it's not just a pretty face with a $392,000 window sticker. No. It is actually a Porsche Panamera in Bentley drag. This is outrageous. Unconscionable. Nuts.
It rips off a 2.99 second 0 to 60 with 650 horsepower coming from a masterpiece of an engine. One of the world's most power dense, in fact. An ingenious 12-cylinder that takes up less space than a V8.
But it's about to come to an end. Bentley has announced this is the last W12 powered car ever, just as Bentley's sister company Bugatti has announced the end of the W16, the engine that powers the Bugatti Veyron. But this isn't where W stops. This isn't the end of an engine. This is the end of an era.
In the history of the car, there have been very clear chapters in which one person, or one person's company, was clearly defining the automobile of the time. Since you're an enthusiast, you'll be yelling out names like Enzo Ferrari, Ettore Bugatti, or Ferruccio Lamborghini. That's not what I'm talking about. Those men all build a small number of toys for millionaires. And of course, we all dream about maybe one day owning them. But today we're talking about people who influenced millions of cars, the kind that you and I drive every day. There was the Gottlieb Daimler chapter, the once upon a time era where the car was invented. There was a Henry Ford chapter, where serial production line methods commoditized the car so everyone, or nearly everyone, could have one. There's a chapter devoted to Toyota, focusing on continual improvement to revolutionize production efficiency, making the cars not only more affordable, but ensuring they actually worked. And then there was one man who rescued one storied car maker after another from bankruptcy, assembled them all together, and created the world's largest and most powerful car company. His name was
Ferdinand Piëch. Piëch. Piëch?
No.
Piëch?
Piëch. It's a
God, whatever. You don't even like people. I don't get it. Why do you want to do an epic icons episode about an executive? There's a Veyron right here. I don't want to talk about some stupid human.
I saw this coming. First of all, no one ever accused Ferdinand Piëch of being a human. Secondly, he was a lousy executive in that he didn't give a schnitzelscheiße about shareholder value. All he cared about was making great cars. And you'll appreciate this, taking them racing.
Hey, now you got my attention.
See? Piëch.
Oh my God, listen to that. This is the holy grail of the legendary air-cooled 911s, the Carrera 2.7 RS.
Yes! And would you like to tell the audience what Carrera means?
Well, in the movie Cars, it was Sally Carrera's last name. And she had a tramp stamp underneath her rear spoiler.
A, how did I never notice this? B, also, perhaps a little bit more relevantly, Carrera is Italian for race.
Well, and race makes sense because Porsche is the most successful racing manufacturer in the history of the sport.
Yep.
Way back then and right to this day.
And if it weren't for a man named Ferdinand Piëch, the 911 might not have been raceable.
Wait a minute, I thought Bootsy Porsche did the 911.
Bootsy Porsche did. He was Ferdinand Piëch's first cousin who was 2 years older. He did the 911 while Piëch was in college. Ferdinand Piëch graduates, comes to work at Porsche, starts 6 months before the 911 is due to enter production, and stops the whole thing. Says, "Halt, stop, forget it. If we are supposed to sell this car, then we must race this car."
And to make the 911 into a race car, the brand new Hans Metzger designed Flat 6 needed dry sump lubrication. Just months into his first job ever, Piëch managed to convince Metzger and the whole management team to redesign the 911's oiling system.
If he had been just 6 months younger, he might not have been there to demand the dry sump.
Right.
And the Porsche 911, the definition of sports car, for 60 years, might not have been able to survive on the racetrack.
That was that man's first ever achievement in the automotive industry, ensuring that the 911 was raceable. Good start, right?
And the 911 was just the beginning. Piëch didn't subscribe to the less is more philosophy. He used a more is more approach to help Porsche dominate motorsports, taking the company's racers from dinky little 4-cylinders to 6s, 8s, 12s, and even a prototype 16-cylinder. Piëch went for more until he hit most with the 917, perhaps the greatest racing machine of all time. With twin turbos on its flat 12, the 1100 horsepower 917 was so hog wild that it killed off its own racing series. Even without the turbos, the naturally aspirated 917 won Le Mans, kicking off Porsche's unmatched success at the world's greatest race. And the company's thank you to Ferdinand Piëch for all of his success?
They fired him. But that had nothing to do with his work. Look, little insider information. When Ferdinand Piëch called the bank, and for security purposes, they needed to know his mother's maiden name, he had no choice but to tell them it was Porsche. You like the car company.
Welcome to the Porsche family tree. Ferdinand Porsche was the genius inventor who started the whole mystique. His son, also named Ferdinand Porsche, was the Ferdinand who created the sports car company we know today. His son, another Ferdinand Porsche, was the Ferdinand who created the 911. This Ferdinand was roughly the same age as our Ferdinand, Mr. Piëch, and more than half of the 8 Porsche descendants in their generation were in management positions at Porsche. And as you can imagine, they were killing each other.
And screwing each other, or at least each other's wives. Like that time that Piëch knocked up his cousin's wife and had 3 kids with her, and then left her for the tutor and had 3 kids with her. To say nothing of the 5 kids he had with his first wife, or the 2 more he had with the nanny. That's 13 Piëchlets, in case you're counting. Look, the man was certainly fertile, but he was also out of a job.
They all were. The Ferdinands' parents agreed that the only way to stop the fighting, though not necessarily the stupping, was to prohibit all Porsche descendants from being high-level managers at the company. And so Piëch started up a consulting agency and was immediately hired by Mercedes-Benz to extract more power from its existing 4-cylinder diesel engine.
It took him just 6 months. Piëch added another cylinder, creating the world's first production passenger car 5-cylinder engine. It was the Goldilocks diesel. Better performance than the 4, better economy than a 6-cylinder. I bet you didn't realize it was a Piëch thing. Engine is now legendary for its 5-cylinder lope, its clatter, and its indestructibility. Mercedes was so pleased with Dr. Piëch's work that they offered to put him in line to become the next chief of development. And he turned him down because he said that Mercedes-Benz engineering budget was too small. What? In the history of the world, those words have never before been said. Or since. However, immediately thereafter, Audi learned how to speak 5-cylinder when it hired Dr. Piëch to run its special projects. There, he developed a 5-cylinder that spoke a different dialect. It burned gas.
At this point in its history, Audi had no identity. The company was trying desperately to differentiate itself on the market by using a Wankel rotary engine. Piëch was having none of that. In fact, he was known internally as the Wankel Killer, because instead he wanted 5 cylinders and diesels. You know, engines that actually worked.
Obviously, he won that battle, earning him keys to the palace. And palace is, by the way, the right word. Piëch was so influential that insiders at Audi referred to the R&D center as Palazzo Piëch. And this is all before he came up with a real way to give Audi an identity.
Remember that it had only been a couple of years since the Porsche 917, and Piëch's heart was still in motorsport when one of his engineers came up with an unusual plan to give Audi a competitive advantage in racing.
4-wheel drive, which was unthinkable. At the time, 4-wheel drive systems existed basically just to get your stuck truck out of the mud, but then stop that truck from turning. Audi developed a permanent all-wheel drive system that didn't hurt turning nearly as much. In fact, when Audi tested its first prototype, it made it around the Hockenheim ring about as quickly as a front-wheel drive Audi with 50% more power. And that was on dry pavement. It would have been a bigger benefit if it was snowy or wet or muddy, making Quattro the perfect tool to win rallies. All Piëch had to do was convince Volkswagen's upper management to pay for it.
You've probably seen this TV commercial, but this wasn't just a commercial. This was based on a real stunt that Piëch pulled. Without telling anyone in advance, Piëch showed up at a meeting of Volkswagen managers taking place at the top of a mountain in Austria. To get to them, he drove a prototype Quattro right up Europe's steepest mountain pass, a 23% grade, in snow, on summer tires, right in front of the other managers who were presumably stunned, speechless.
Point made. Piëch's original plan was to make just 400 Quattros only for rally homologation. But after that whole hill climb stunt, it became obvious to everyone that 4-wheel drive road cars could give Audi an identity. And more importantly, it would give BMW and Mercedes customers a real reason to consider buying an Audi.
Of course, the Quattro did enter motorsports, and its dominance was complete. It permanently killed off two-wheel drive rally cars, and it was seen as such an unfair advantage that it got itself banned from many forms of racing, including even SCCA Trans Am.
More significantly, Quattro marked the beginning of the all-wheel drive passenger car. And today, there is not a single manufacturer who doesn't sell an all-wheel drive car in America. And that started right here. You know what also started here? That's right, TDI. This is Ferdinand Piëch's combination of a turbocharger and direct injection that finally made the diesel engine a viable alternative to the gas engine. It was powerful enough, it was smooth enough, and it was quiet enough. But it sure did deliver on the MPGs. Listen, that clattering sound might have been a bit player here in America, but it changed the face of the worldwide car market. Within just a couple of years after TDI was invented, half of the cars sold in Europe were diesels.
And Dr. Piëch's reward for this achievement? He was fired.
JK, he was given control over the entire Volkswagen Group. The smoldering dumpster fire of the Volkswagen Group, which was said to have been just 3 months away from bankruptcy. First order of business for Dr. Piëch? He made a joke. He said, Volkswagen will build a car that is better than a Mercedes-Benz. That's really funny, right? No, it's exactly what he did. When the Mk4 Golf came out, it sent Mercedes-Benz back to school to learn how to make an interior. This was a miniature hatchback luxury car. And it came with a 6-cylinder that was so smooth and so sonorous that Mercedes bought it to put in its own cars. The VR6 is, to this day, acoustically unmatched by just about every other 6-cylinder ever made. You'd have to buy a 911 GT3 from Piëch's uncle to get a better noise out of a 6-cylinder. The R32 came with Piëch's trademark all-wheel drive, but it was also the first car ever put in production with a dual-clutch automatic transmission, DSG in Volkswagen speak. And that's another Piëch-era invention that has spread like wildfire throughout the entire automotive industry. Though thank God, in the US we got a manual.
The Mk4 range went from fuel-sipping, clattering TDI to the screaming R32. To the outside world, it seemed Piëch could do no wrong. But internally, he was ruthless. He accepted nothing but the best from everyone. You couldn't deliver? You're out. Stand in his way? Well, that's when things got scary.
Immer wenn es Krieg geht, sind am Ende weniger vorhanden. Und es gibt immer Gewinner und Verlierer. Und ich habe die Absicht, mit unseren Partnern, die VW in der ganzen Welt hat, der Sieger zu sein.
Oh my God, I hope that works with the subtitles, because in German, that is the scariest thing ever recorded. All the tics and the facial twitches, that is disturbing. It would have sent a Bond villain home to his mommy. But Volkswagen needed a ruthless fix-it man, and they found one. Piëch wasn't just scary, he must have also been at least a little bit self-aware. Because years later, he said, only when a company is in severe difficulty will it let in someone like me. In normal, calmer times, I would have never gotten a chance.
That chance wasn't just the opportunity to build a Golf that would irritate Mercedes like a mosquito bite, but a full-on attempt to slash their throat by making a luxury car better than the S-Class.
The Phaeton is the embodiment of Piëch's obsessions. It was engineered to be the best at all times for all people, with no excuses or exceptions. Simply put, this was to be the best car in the world. And when Piëch listed out his requirements for it, half of his team quit on the spot. And then the other half delivered. This is a 12-cylinder that's physically smaller than a V8, and that's because it consists of two of Volkswagen's ingeniously compact VR6s joined at the crank. 6 liters and 420 horsepower means it's not just smaller than a V8, it's more powerful than one too. And of course, it's married to Quattro all-wheel drive.
For safety and for quietness, the Phaeton's body was so stiff that it made a contemporary Mercedes feel like undercooked Spätzle by comparison. It was a technological showpiece. It even had an air conditioning system that provided cool air without blowing directly at you, because Germans believe that moving air will make you sick.
You gotta be kidding me, Jason.
I'm not kidding, it's a thing, look it up. Randy Popst, es zieht, there's wind moving, I will get sick.
What about all those Germans hiking and in the woods and the hills are alive with the sound of music? I mean, I know that's Austrian.
Yeah, but Ferdinand Piëch was Austrian too. I don't understand what it is about the Germans. They're outside, the wind moves, it's fine. But if that air should happen to come through a vent or an open window, it's fucking lethal.
I'll tell you what, I'll kill that vent right now.
Please do. Can't risk it.
Wow.
The thing that made Volkswagen's platform sharing cars so good is ironically the thing that makes most badge engineered cars so bad. It's part sharing.
Badge engineered. Like when you take a crap car, put some leather in it, double the price, and slap a luxury brand on it.
Yep, hold on, I'm turning the AC back on. It's getting a little stuffy in here. However, I am applying a scarf lest I catch cervicale.
What the hell is that?
Oh, cervicale is the Italian version of es zieht. The Italians believe that if wind is moving and touches your neck, it'll make you sick.
Wow.
Speaking of crazy Italians, let's talk about Lamborghini. Yet another brand that Piëch bought and saved from bankruptcy. Badge engineering is how he made an Audi R8 and a Lamborghini Gallardo out of the same car. Piëch did part sharing in the opposite direction as everyone else though. He started at the top, always engineering a car for the highest possible brand, and then allowing it to trickle down and be rebadged as something cheaper. The Gallardo was made to be a real Lamborghini, which made it an incredible Audi. Not the other way around, which would have resulted in a good Audi, but an embarrassment of a Lamborghini.
Like the Urus is today.
You're not wrong. Ferdinand Piëch is probably rolling over in his grave over that thing. The Urus is not up to the standards of a Lamborghini. It is very clearly an Audi Q8 with a Lamborghini badge on it. And here's the thing, Piëch's way was cheaper. All he did was make a really good set of expensive parts and then take advantage of economy of scales by producing a ton of them.
So you can build a cheap car with high volume of expensive parts and it'll still be inexpensive.
Yeah, and that's how you wind up with a Golf as a little bitty luxury car. Although I think we can all agree that the Volkswagen Phaeton was probably one step too far.
$100,000 VW People's car? That just did not fly in the showrooms. I think Piëch's ego was getting a little bit the best of him. It really should have been an Audi. How dumb.
How dumb or how smart? Because don't forget, the Volkswagen Phaeton was good enough that it could be sold for 2 decades as a Bentley at 2 and 3 times that price.
Phaeton Bentley. I didn't even know that.
I guess it didn't really matter that the Phaeton was a disaster in the showrooms. Piëch still had the last laugh. I take over the world. We put a Bentley badge on a Volkswagen and they buy it. Turn the air conditioning down, please. This time, nobody was laughing.
You already know that the Bugatti Veyron was the fastest car in the world. What you probably don't realize is that Dr. Piëch didn't care about that. If he did, the Veyron wouldn't have been nearly that fast. It didn't just reclaim the road car record from a certain McLaren. It utterly destroyed the McLaren F1.
Which, as delivered, only did 350-ish kilometers an hour. Piëch set this car's top speed at a very precise 407 kilometers an hour. Not an even marketing-friendly 400, but 407. Out of the showroom, no mods. And the reason why? Because winning the top speed battle had nothing to do with other road cars.
This was about race cars, and the Veyron's target was to avenge the loss of his all-conquering Porsche 917 that had been taken away from him when he and all the cousins were kicked out of Porsche management. In the intervening years, a crucial racing record had been taken from the 917. The Peugeot WMP88 now held the record for the highest speed ever achieved on the Mulsanne Straight at Le Mans.
That speed was 407 kilometers an hour. That was the Veyron's target. And it's kind of hard to think of a bigger middle finger to a race car than building a road car that's just as fast, but also happens to be an exquisitely crafted luxury car that your grandmother could drive to church. When it comes to showing off a company's technical prowess, there are three main yardsticks. That's power, acceleration, and top speed. And the Veyron held the record for all three. However, there's another yardstick that's of no less sex appeal to engineers, and that's efficiency. 250 miles an hour wasn't enough for Dr. Piëch. He also wanted 250 miles per gallon. And he got it.
This is a mid-engined two-seater like the Veyron. The whole car is carbon fiber, like the Veyron. It has carbon ceramic brakes and a 7-speed DSG, like the Veyron. Its door hinges and gas struts are works of industrial art, even better than the Veyron's. And like the Veyron, it's turbocharged.
And what the hell is it?
Well, if you'd let me finish my voiceover, I was just about to say,
it is the Bugatti Veyron of MPGs, the Volkswagen XL1.
By all rights, the Volkswagen XL1 should have been a cardboard rolling science experiment with wires hanging everywhere and parts falling off. They only made 200 of these things. Bugatti made more than twice that many Veyrons. When it comes down to low-volume experimental cars, it doesn't get any more low volume than this. And yet, the car is staggeringly well built. This is a real complete car. A complete car with 1/8 as many cylinders as a Veyron. But 2 is clearly enough. Because we are doing 100 miles an hour in the world's first car to ever be government rated at less than 1 liter per 100 kilometers. This used 0.9, that is 261 miles per gallon, though probably not at these speeds.
And at the end of this video, we'll link to our Revelations episode on it, because the XL1 story is really, really, really cool.
And key point, literally, its key was identical to the Golf's key, which was identical to the Phaeton's key, which was identical to the Veyron's key, because this one part was good enough for all of them. Piëch's part-sharing strategy had won him the game of the automobile. He owned everything: Volkswagen, Audi, Porsche, Bentley, Bugatti, to say nothing of Lamborghini, Seat, and Sokda. VW had everything from the bottom of the market to the absolute top. And so, in April 2015, at the age of 78, Dr. Ferdinand Piëch tendered his resignation to the Volkswagen Supervisory Board, knowing he'd done it all.
Or maybe he just knew what was coming next. Just 5 months later, Volkswagen was in big trouble.
German automaker Volkswagen is in court today, facing a class action lawsuit over an emissions cheating scandal, the so-called Dieselgate.
They actively, very scientifically, and very thoroughly planned how they were going to defraud the U.S. government.
And at the core of it all, Piëch's beloved TDI engine. After installing a defeat device that would allow noxious emissions in the real world, while appearing to be clean on government tests, Dieselgate has now cost Volkswagen almost $40 billion. And it killed off the diesel passenger car completely in the US. Mortally wounded it in Europe too. Last year, Europeans bought more electric cars than they did diesels. Piëch maintained he had no knowledge of the defeat devices, and that might well be true, because they were all engineered and implemented after his mandatory retirement age, where he sat on the supervisory board, ostensibly just watching over the company. Or he could have just killed people. No one knows. What we do know is that Piëch's named successor, Martin Winterkorn, is now a fugitive of US law, and he's about to start his own trial in Germany. Maybe then we'll find out whether he ever told Dr. Piëch about the defeat device that he approved for use, when for once Volkswagen's engineers couldn't pull off the impossible.
It's not just Diesel and Dr. Piëch that are both gone. Like Dr. Piëch himself, this Bentley is 50% Porsche DNA. But this will be the last Bentley ever to use a Piëch-era W engine.
And it doesn't end there. Bugatti didn't just confirm the end of the W16. The whole brand was so lost without Dr. Piëch that it turned over the keys to a Croatian upstart. The VR6 engine is dead. The Audi 5-cylinder is on death watch, installed in only one car. Even the Golf, the centerpiece of Volkswagen's lineup for 50 years, is on life support. Dieselgate spelled the sudden end of TDI, and it should have set Volkswagen up to dominate the EV market by forcing it to pivot more quickly than any other traditional car maker. But instead, we got an ID disaster.
Without Piëch at the helm, Volkswagen was just lost. And so now, looking back on that 30-year period where Volkswagen was on top of the world, we know that chapter didn't belong to Volkswagen. That chapter belonged to just one man. What a chapter it was.
An example of just how stout Piëch-era engineering was. This Veyron was driven into a saltwater lagoon. Thanks to Piëch, it's here. Thanks to Houston Crosta, this very Veyron is here. He chronicled resurrecting the Scubatti like a hero and then sent it to us to abuse. It's pretty amazing. There's a link to his videos below. You should watch them.
Also, don't forget to click on the link at the top of your screen to see our whole episode on the absolutely astonishing Volkswagen XL1, the supercar, super mileage, super thing that you've never even heard of.